Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and salam sejahtera to all. So this is a video for chapter 4, hypothesis testing, part 3, where in this part 3 we are going to look at the difference between more than two means by using one-way analysis of variance. One-way analysis of variance, or ANOVA, is a statistical method used to analyze a dataset from a design experiment. It is used to compare three or more population means. Now, even though one is comparing means in this use of F-test, variance are used in the test of means. So here, even though you nak compare means, but kita akan gunakan variance in the test of means. So some of the important terminologies are: experiment is a research method in which the experimenter manipulates the independent variable and examine whether changes occur in the dependent variable. Factor, the independent or explanatory variable manipulated or controlled by the experimenter. So biasanya factor ada dua atau lebih levels. Factor levels adalah categories of the factor which are set by the experimenter. Response adalah the dependent variable or outcome being measured by the experimenter. Treatment adalah combination of factor level applied to an experimental unit. But untuk one-way ANOVA, treatment should always equal to the factor level. Experimental unit pula adalah entity, sama ada person, plant, animal atau apa-apa saja objek from which a measurement is taken. Before we can conduct ANOVA, we need to ensure that the necessary assumptions are met. So there are three assumptions. The first one is independence, where the samples are independent and randomly selected from the population. Second assumption, population normality. So population from which the sample have been drawn should be normal. And the third assumption is homogeneity of variance, where the scores in each group should have homogeneous variance. So we start our hypothesis testing with step number 1, state the statistical hypothesis. So in ANOVA, since we are comparing more than two means, our null hypothesis is mu1 equal to mu2 equal to mu3 up until mu k, where k is the number of treatments or the number of groups. And your alternative hypothesis will be at least one mean is different from the others. So please state betul-betul your null hypothesis, mu1 sama dengan mu2 sampai berapa group yang you compare. For the second step, we find the critical values. As you know, critical values separate the critical region with non-critical region. So we find our critical value from the F table, with alpha can either be 0.1, 0.05, 0.025, 0.01 or 0.05, with degree of freedom, kita ada dua dekat sini. Okay, degree of freedom untuk numerator and degree of freedom untuk denominator. Degree of freedom untuk numerator adalah K minus 1, denoted dekat dalam table as V1. So what is K? K is the number of treatments ataupun the number of groups yang you compare untuk one-way ANOVA. Degree of freedom untuk denominator adalah N minus K, denoted as V2 dalam F table. So what is capital N? Capital N adalah sum of the sample size for each group. Okay, where capital N adalah N1 plus N2 plus up to Nk, where N1 adalah sample size ataupun number of observation dalam group number 1 plus the sample size dalam group number 2 and so on. Okay, dalam bahasa mudahnya, capital N adalah total number of observation. So the sample size need not be equal. Okay, and the f-test to compare means is always right tail. Okay, kita pakai f-test sentiasa right tail. So ini diagram untuk f-tail, dia skewed to the right. So kita cari critical values, and if value tu berada dalam critical region, okay, we reject. Tak ada dalam critical region, we do not reject. So this critical value separate the two area. Okay, so this is your F table. Okay, saya screenshot daripada your statistical table. So you can see from here, dia ada V1, degree of freedom for numerator. This is K minus 1. And V2, this one is N minus K. So table dia sedikit berbeza berbanding dengan table yang you pernah gunakan sebelum ni. Okay, dia berbeza sedikit as compared to your Z table and your T table. So apa yang berbeza? Kita tengok sikit dekat atas ni, dia ada bagi tahu. Dia kata dekat sini, for each pair of values of V1 and V2, okay, for F alpha V1, V2 is tabulated for 0.05, 0.025, 0.01 and 0.01. And then dia tambah dekat sini, the 0.025 values being bracket. So, saya ambil satu contoh. Saya ambil this example. Okay. So, F, okay, untuk 0.05 degree of freedom 24, 1 is equivalent to 249. Yang dalam bracket ni adalah for 0.025, 24, 1, 997. Yang bawah tu pula 0.01, 24, 1, 6, 2, 3, 5. And last kali you tengok, itu sebenarnya adalah 0.001 with degree of freedom 24 and 1. Dia bagi situ 6, 2, 3, 5 tapi ada star kat situ. So apa maksud star tu? Star tu bermaksud you kena multiply by 100. Okay, kalau awak tengok awak punya statistical table, awak pergi dekat bawah tu, dia ada bagi tahu. Okay, number with values with asterisk tu ataupun with star tu, you have to multiply by 100. Okay, so that is how you are going to read your statistical table untuk F-test. Okay, for step number 3, we need to test our hypothesis. So, previously, we have 3 methods. In ANOVA, we only use either the p-value method or the test statistic method, which is F-test. So, kalau you pakai p-value, sama macam sebelum ni. If your p-value less than alpha, you reject. If not, vice versa. And the second one is by using f-test. So, untuk f-test, you have to draw and calculate this table, all these values. Okay, so kalau you tengok dalam table ni, we have the source of variation between treatments, within treatments, sometimes called error, and total. And then we have the sum of squares, which is SS. SSB is sum of squares between groups ataupun between treatments. SSW adalah sum of square within treatments or within groups. Okay, ataupun you boleh pakai SSE, sum of squares error. And SST adalah sum of squares untuk total. The degree of freedom untuk between treatments adalah K-1, your V1. Within treatment adalah capital N minus K, which is your V2. Okay, V1 plus V2 should be equal to N minus 1. And then we have mean squared, MS. Okay, MSB is mean square between treatments, and MSW adalah mean square within treatments. Ada juga buku pakai MSE, mean square error. So macam mana nak cari mean square? Mean square adalah column number 1 bahagi column number 2. So dibagi kat sini column 1, column number 2. So untuk cari MSB adalah SSB bagi K-1. Untuk cari MSW adalah SSW bagi N-K. Okay. So lepas tu baru you boleh cari your F. F ni apa? MSB bagi MSW. So later kita akan tengok step by steps lah. Okay. Saya tunjuk dulu macam nak calculate. So K is the number of sample ataupun the number of treatments ataupun the number of groups. Okay. If you want to compare between 5 groups, so your K is 5. Capital T is the sum of the values in each sample or groups. Okay, if you have 5 groups, total in each group tu adalah capital T. Okay, biasanya kita denote T1 for total in group 1, T2 for total in group 2, and so on. Capital N adalah the total number of observation ataupun N1 plus N2 plus N onward sampai K lah, where tadi saya bagi tahu N dekat situ adalah sample size. Okay, number of sample. Summation of X adalah the sum of all values in all sample, ataupun you boleh buat T1 plus T2 plus T3 sampailah Tk. Sebab T2 adalah jumlah dalam setiap sampel, dalam setiap group. So you total up, sama juga you akan dapat summation of X. Summation of X squared adalah the sum of squares of value in all sample. So summation of X adalah 1. Okay, you squaredkan semua observation sampai habis. Okay, so untuk cari total punya sum of squares, SST. Okay, summation of X squared tolak summation of X bracket squared over N. Nak cari SSB is this one, the formula is given. T squared bahagi dengan N1, T2 squared bahagi dengan N2, and so on, minus summation of X squared over N. And SSW adalah SST minus SSB. So this one, kita boleh pindah kiri dan kanan macam biasa. So, actually, between, okay, tambah dengan SS within, dapat SS total. So, kalau you nak cari SSW, SSB tu bawa ke kanan, that's why dapat SST tolak SSB. Okay, so dia boleh pindah kiri dan kanan macam biasa. Okay, once you have already calculated all the values, then you bolehlah buat decision whether to reject or not to reject. So, untuk test statistics method, sama macam sebelum-sebelum ni. If the test value, okay, lies within the critical region, we reject. If not, we do not reject. Okay, untuk p-value method pula, if the p-values is less than or equal to alpha, kita reject. If the p-value is greater than your alpha, we do not reject our H0. Once you have decided whether to reject or not to reject, please make sure that you make conclusion. Okay, conclude whether there is or there is no enough evidence to support the claim made in the question. Okay, so sebenarnya dalam hypothesis testing ini, step dia sama, cuma method, okay, nak dapatkan test statistics untuk reject or not to reject tu berbeza. So, let's go through some examples. So this is the first example, example number 1. The manager of a large tourism agency wanted to know whether the average number of cigarettes smoked per day differ among its employees. The employees were divided according to designation. Senior manager, this is the first group. Junior manager, second group. Senior employee, third group. Junior employee, fourth group. And secretary, 5 groups. Okay, so we can see from the question that the population consists of 5 different groups. And dibagi table 6 ANOVA tu, dia bagi you between group punya sum of squares, SS, SSB 418, SSWP dia bagi total 7141. Degree of freedom, Q, 102, 106. Mean square dia tak bagi, dia minta kita calculate. Dia bagi you F pun dia suruh cari, and dia bagi you significant, this one is your P value. Okay, so macam mana nak buat? Alright, so dia kata table 6 above shows the PSS output for one-way ANOVA. Based on the output, answer the following question. So dia minta you compute PQRST, state the null and alternative hypothesis, and using the F-test, dia minta you buat hypothesis testing. So, sebelum saya tunjukkan jawapan on the next page, okay, saya go through sikit lah, right? So, untuk sum of squares, okay, this one. Tadi saya ada bagi tahu SSB tambah SSW sama dengan SST. So, kalau you ada SSB, you ada SST, you boleh cari your P. Same goes to degree of freedom. Okay. Q. Okay. You boleh pakai K minus 1. Or degree of freedom untuk between group numerator tambah degree of freedom untuk denominator should be equal to degree of freedom untuk total. Okay, mean square adalah SS bahagi dengan degree of freedom. F pula adalah MSB bagi dengan MSW. So, kita tengok macam mana nak jawab soalan ni. Okay, so kita tengok macam mana nak cari P, Q, R, S and T. So, dia suruh cari P. So, P tu sebenarnya adalah your sum of squares within. Okay, so tadi saya ada bagi tahu SSB tambah SSW sama dengan SST. So, you ada SST, you ada SSB, nak cari SSW, pindah saja SSB ke kiri. So, jadi tolak. So, that's why dia dapat this one. Okay. Untuk Q pula adalah degree of freedom untuk between. Okay. So, degree of freedom untuk total, tolak degree of freedom untuk within, dapat 4. Sebab tadi saya ada bagi tahu, degree of freedom untuk between tambah degree of freedom untuk within, dapat degree of freedom untuk total. Dia bagi total, dia bagi degree of freedom untuk within, so boleh cari this one. Yang ini pindah ke kanan. Kalau you tak nak pakai this method, you boleh juga buat Q sama dengan degree of freedom between sama dengan K minus 1. And tadi kita tengok daripada soalan, dia ada 5 kumpulan daripada senior manager, junior manager, senior employee sampailah ke secretary. So, dia ada 5 groups. So, 5 minus 1. You dapat 4. Jawapan dia samalah. Okay. Untuk cari R adalah MSB. So, macam mana dapat MSB? MSB adalah SSB bagi degree of freedom untuk between. S pula adalah MSW ataupun MS error. SSW bagi degree of freedom untuk within. Dan T pula adalah your F, which is MSB minus MSW. Right? Soalan B, dia minta you state the null and alternative hypothesis for this study. So, your null hypothesis should be written as mu1 sama dengan mu2, sama dengan mu3, sama dengan mu4, sama dengan mu5. Make sure hanya ada 5 min saja di sini. Kenapa? Because kita hanya ada 5 groups yang kita nak compare. Jangan tulis sampai mu k, because soalan nak tahu, okay, adakah you faham berapa bilangan K, berapa banyak kumpulan yang you are trying to compare. And your null hypothesis will be at least one mean is different from the others. So, by using the F-test, is there any evidence to reject the null hypothesis at 5% level of significance? What can you say about the average number of cigarette smoke among the employees? So, kalau awak tengok dekat sini, dia suruh test, hypothesis testing. So, this is tadi yang kita buat tu adalah step number 1. Yang ini, step number 2. Yang ini, step number 3. Your F value, tadi kita dah kira. And then lepas tu, decide. This is step number 4. And there is no sufficient evidence, ini adalah step number 5. So, dalam contoh ni saya tak asingkan, but I would suggest you bila jawab soalan dalam exam, tuliskan satu-satu what is your step number 1, step number 2, step number 3 and so on, so that it will make it easier for me or other lecturers to mark your paper. Okay, so untuk C tadi, dia kata using the F-test, is there any evidence to reject the null hypothesis? what can you say about the average number of cigarette smoke? So, kita punya null hypothesis sama. mu1 sama dengan mu2 sama dengan mu3 sampailah mu5 sama. And this suruh test at 5% level of significance. So, alpha 0.05. Okay. So, kita cari kita punya critical value kita. For F 0.05, V1 4, V2 102, kita dapat 2.53. So, macam mana saya dapat 2.53? Okay, refer dekat your F distribution table. Go to V1 4, V2 102. So, kalau you tengok dekat table, 102 tak ada. Kita ada 60 and 120. Kita nak cari 102. So, kita pakai konsep cari yang paling hampir tanpa melebihi nilai yang kita nak. So, kalau 120 ni dah lebih daripada 102. So, kita ambil yang dekat tapi belum lebih, which is 60. Okay. So, tadi saya ada bagi tahu, dia bagi you 0.05, 0.025, 0.01 and 0.001. So, kita nak alpha 0.05, this is the value. Okay, your critical value adalah 2.53. So, if saya sketch sikit, you punya F curve. Okay, your critical value 2.53. So, anything above 2.53 dah lies within the rejection region. Okay, so rejection region. Okay, so kita tadi calculate kita punya F 1.586. So 1.586 should be around here sebelum 2.53. So our calculated F is not within the critical rejection region. So our F, okay, 1.586 is less than our critical value. Thus, we do not reject our H null. So, kalau kita tak reject our H null, okay, dia tanya sini, what can you say about the average number of cigarette smoke? So, there is no sufficient evidence to indicate that the average number of cigarette smoke among the employees is different. Okay, so like I told you before, untuk any hypothesis testing punya question, I would suggest you to do it step by step, show step by step dalam your answer paper. Okay, it will make it easier for me and other lecturers to see your answer. Okay, so now let's move on to example number 2. So dia kata dekat sini, the dean of a college believe that there may be a difference in the mean age of his faculty members. Okay, dean ni percaya yang ada perbezaan umur di antara faculty members from different departments. So he obtained the following information about the age of the members. So dia ada how many groups? 1, 2, 3, 4 groups. So your K sama dengan 4. And untuk the first group, kita ada N1 sama dengan 5, N2 ada 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, sample. N3, 5 sampel. N4, 5 sampel. So, you have a total of 21 observation. That will be your capital N. So the SPSS software was used to conduct the analysis of variance, and using the recorded data, the following table give the output for the analysis. So dia bagi you banyak blank space dekat sini, PQRST. Dia minta you calculate lah nanti. So kita tengok macam mana nak calculate. Okay, again saya nak bagi tahu dekat sini, P tambah 1313 ni dapat Q. 3 tambah 17 dapat 20. R adalah P bahagi 3. S ni pula adalah 1313 bahagi 17. And T adalah R bahagi S. Ini adalah your P value. So kita tengok macam mana nak jawab. Okay, so based on the output, answer the following question. Dia tanya how many observations are involved, show that P is equivalent to 143.606 and hence find the value of QRST, state the null and alternative hypothesis, and then based on the P value, conclude. Okay, by using alpha 0.05. Okay, tengok macam nak jawab. So, tadi dia tanya soalan A tadi, how many observation? Tertinggal tu. Okay, how many observation? So, kita ada a total of 21 observation. Okay, so untuk soalan B ni, dia suruh cari P, Q, R, S and T. So, P daripada soalan tadi sebenarnya adalah your SSB. So, ini adalah formula untuk SSB. T1 squared over N1 plus T2 squared over N2. And since kita ada 4 group, so sampai T4 squared over N4 minus summation of X squared over N. So, mana dia dapat T1? Okay, ini group pertama, kedua, ketiga, keempat. So, T1 adalah hasil tambah untuk group pertama. 28 tambah 35. Dia dapat 179. T2 adalah hasil tambah grup kedua. 45, 37 onward sampailah 44. Dia dapat 257. Same goes to group, the third group and the fourth group. Okay. N1 adalah sample size untuk group number 1, 5. N2 sample size untuk group number 2, 6. Dan seterusnya. Summation of X adalah hasil tambah X. Awak boleh buat satu-satu, 28 tambah 35, semua tu. Sampailah hotel punya faculty, tambah 26, tambah 33. Or, since awak dah ada T1, T2 and T3 sampai T4, you boleh buat T1 tambah T2 tambah T3 tambah T4. Total dia dapat 829. So, summation of X squared adalah 829 kuasa 2. So, dapatlah 143.606. So, Q adalah your SST total. So, SST adalah SSB tambah SSW. R adalah your MSB, where MSB adalah SSB bahagi dengan degree of freedom untuk B, between tadi. S pula adalah MSW, and T is your F. Okay, so this is the value of F yang you calculated. Do step by steps, insyaAllah boleh jawab lah. Okay, soalan dia sama saja. Just make sure that you all tak careless. Okay, and then they minta you state the null and alternative hypothesis. So for our null hypothesis, should be mu1 sama dengan mu2, sama dengan mu3, sama dengan mu4. Up until 4 sahaja, because you are comparing 4 faculties. And your Alternative hypothesis is at least one mean is different from the others. Okay, untuk D, based on the p-value, can you conclude that there is a significant difference in the mean age among the 4 department members using alpha 0.05? So sama juga, dia sebenarnya minta kita buat hypothesis testing, ada 5 step. So this is the first step kita dah buat kat atas. So step number 2, okay, apa alpha kita? Step number 3, dapatkan our p-value. Step number 4, decide whether reject or not to reject. And last, don't forget to make your conclusion. So since your p-value 0.612 is greater than your alpha 0.05, thus we do not reject our H now. So there is no sufficient evidence to conclude that there is a significant difference in the mean age among the 4 department members. Okay, so soalan ANOVA ini lebih kurang sama saja. Please make sure that you know how to calculate the SSB and also the SST, and also know how to find your mean score and also your F. Alright, so I guess that's all. Saya akan bagi you example lain kemudian. So that's the end of part 3, ANOVA. Thank you everyone.